The most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black Today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbranson and Matt Gutierrez.
All right. Happy Sunday. A warm and muggy Sunday for Las Vegas. That is, this is Silver and Black Today, the only all Raiders all the time talk show in Las Vegas with listeners from around the nation, all members of Raider Nation. Of course, I'm Scott Gulbranson, your host. I'm the publisher of Raider News website, silverandblacktoday.com. And I'm joined by my co-host and contributor at silverandblacktoday.com, also the co-host of the Sports Adrenaline, which you can hear here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM on Saturdays in the same time slot. Matt, how you doing this morning?
Good, man. It's Sunday. It's summertime, which means it's another movie day.
Oh, movie day, man. I love it, man. I love it.
Got the Marvel shirt rolling today.
Well, and that's it's interesting, too. We are having, of course, it's Las Vegas, so we have heat during the summer. But it is also now monsoon season, so we're starting to get moisture. We're going to have rain here.
Hope so.
I know. It's been 67 days, according to the National Weather Service in Las Vegas, who, by the way, follow them on Twitter if you live in the area. It's really cool. A great.
Didn't we have
they do a great job.
130-something days last year before we had any rain?
Yeah, it was crazy.
It's kind of dry here in the desert, if you guys didn't know that.
Just a little bit. We're also joined by the millennial member of our team. Got to have one, right? Which is recent UNLV graduate, our crack in the field correspondent, David Stepanian, who, by the way, will lead a segment later in the show because he's just that damn good. How you doing, David?
Good, Scott. Thanks for introducing me. Recent UNLV grad, I noticed that, and also I noticed the Marvel shirt too as well, Matt. I saw Ant-Man, so I just want to give you a heads up. It's great. No, it's awesome.
Oh,
that's the only spoiler.
He's giving you the thumbs up. That's good.
That's I can't wait, man.
Yeah, we got to get out and see that too as a family, so that's good. Each week we meet here to talk Raiders football, to give you our views and to take your calls. So don't be a wallflower. Pick up the phone. Get on the air with us. You are host number 4. At 702-889-5978. That's 702-889-5978. In addition to calling us, you can tweet at us, Silver Black Today, the number today. Also, check out, you can find Matt and I and David as well on there. We're live also on the web again today, so if you want to watch us, you can. We are available in a bunch of different spots, including Facebook, Twitch TV, Periscope, so on Twitter, YouTube, and where else? I think that's it. That's enough.
I don't know. We seem to be on forums I'm not even aware of yet.
Yeah, Twitch TV, which is traditionally gaming, but a lot more stuff happening there. So, man, we have a killer show today, guys. I mean, I'm really excited about it. In the first hour, you don't want to miss this, the first of a 2-part interview with the great author Peter Richmond. He wrote the beloved Raiders book, Badasses, The Legend of Snake, Fu, Dr. Death, and John Madden's Oakland Raiders. He talks with us about those teams, Al Davis and that coach, John Madden. The second part of the interview will be in hour number 2, so do not go anywhere if you hear that first part, which we'll talk more about. It's a little bit more contemporary Raiders, including the move to Las Vegas. And Richmond ripped savagely Las Vegas when the Raiders were about to vote to come here. But he's changed his mind. He's kind of had a change of heart, Matt, and you got to hear what he has to say, right?
That really pissed me off, too, man, to be honest with you, because I really wanted to get into it with him and kind of battle him on that whole situation because, you know, when you start ripping Vegas, I'm obviously native, born and raised, third generation. It just gets to me. It feels like such a personal attack. And I read that article and I was like, oh, I can't wait to talk to this guy. And then as we're talking to him, he's
don't give it away.
Yeah,
don't give it away. So yeah, Matt and Peter they're going to wrestle when he comes out here. No, just kidding. Also in hour number 1, our Armenian All-Star David Stepanian, as I said, will ask and answer the question: were the 1976 Raiders, who won Super Bowl 11, if you don't know, the team's first Lombardi Trophy, one of, if not the greatest teams of all time? He'll tell us what his conclusions are, and we'll discuss with you. That's when we want you to call in for sure at 702-889-5978. We're going to save that conversation, but it will be interesting. Hour number 2 is also jam-packed with silver and black goodness. If you haven't read the LA Daily News Sunday edition from this morning. Go online and pull up Vinny Bonsignore's story today. Vinny came to Las Vegas last week to check in on the status of the team's move to Las Vegas, and he wrote a story. He sat down, I should say, with Mark Bedane and Mark Davis. It's a must-read for all Raider Nation. We'll talk to Vinny about the piece and if he learned anything new. So that's a dynamite interview you will also see in our number tier. There you have it. Now it's your time to chime in. Call us here on Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio 1140, 702-889-5978. Is it me, fellas, or has this offseason, especially if you're a Raiders fan, has this offseason been like 5 months long?
It's always 5 months long. I hate the football offseason. You have almost no downtime when it comes to hockey and basketball, especially if you make any kind of playoff run. There's no downtime whatsoever. Baseball just goes forever. I mean, I know that there's a long offseason there, but spring training seems to come up pretty quickly. And you have 162 games during the season anyway, so it's pretty much every single day whatever team you cheer for is playing. Football, you get once a week for 16 weeks. If you don't make the playoffs, and even if you do, they're over in a month anyways, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Then that's it for 6 months. That's it.
But I also I hear what you're saying on football, and David, you can chime in on this too. But with the Raiders this year, I think there's this anticipation, obviously with the return of Jon Gruden as head coach, and then you have a remade roster, so many changes, and I know some people love some of them, some people don't. But the reality, David, is that when you have all these changes and there's a new excitement around a team like the Raiders who had a bad year last year, it makes it's just the anticipation grows, I think.
Yeah, this is the thing about the football offseason. Just to sort of go off of what Matt was saying, I mean, you have 16 games in football, and the playoffs, they're not best out of 7 series. You only have one game to go off of, and you know it's a pretty long offseason. And I mean, I'm anticipating any Raiders season, but this year in particular, because there's so many new stuff going on, you just sort of compared to previous years. I just want to get this season going.
I think everybody
does.
I'm
just ready for it to be August for preseason, September for the regular season, for that Rams Monday night game. I'm just ready to get things going.
Yeah, and we have somebody on the phone. We have Dave on the phone. Dave, how you doing this morning? Welcome to Silver and Black today.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, man.
I just had a question. With the practice schedule preseason, what type of facility are they going to have? It's got to be indoor. I can't see him playing and practicing in this 100-degree heat. Have you seen any designs or anything with the practice facilities, what they're going to be like?
Good question, Dave. Thanks for your call, man. So here's the deal. With the Raiders, when they come to Las Vegas, you're asking about camp and heat and all that stuff, and the heat obviously comes up a lot when you're talking about the Raiders moving to Las Vegas. Number one is when where they are practicing up in Napa, the temperature actually reaches 100 quite often, high 90s. I know it's a different heat because it's a dry heat here. Boom, boom. But also, yes, they're going to – every indication that we have, Dave, is that they're going to have training camp when they move to Las Vegas in Reno. So that was part of the deal. In Nevada, when anything gets done politically, the North has to get something, the South has to get something. So as the stadium was funded, they're going to train up in Reno for camp. And then my belief is, and I have seen some sketches out that show that they'll have a bubble down here too. They'll have an indoor practice facility.
Yeah, and to be honest, I really think they're only going to need the bubble, that indoor, temperature controlled thing for maybe the first 3 weeks of the season, if that, because once late September comes around and you get into early October, it's pretty much nice here the rest of the year. It's nice until May. Yeah. You get a couple of cold weeks in there, usually in December, maybe January you'll hit one. But, I mean, daytime temperatures, 65 degrees for a high in the winter. I mean, it's gorgeous. So with the exception of the very start of the season when, it's still 105 in the middle of the day, you're not going to have to worry about the weather too much.
No, and if you look at the Arizona Cardinals, and you look at college teams, Arizona State, I just know because I have a child that goes there, they have the white bubble, right, for the practice. And the facility, too, Dave, that they're building out in Henderson, where the Raiders will be headquartered, have their training facility and all of that, will have everything remember, they're starting from scratch. So anything that they could possibly need, plus they're going to be playing their games indoors at the new stadium. So practicing indoors, I think, is something you want to do, too, to get your team familiar. That's what half your games are going to be played indoors. So I think that you'll see that things will go well there and you won't have the heat. And remember, I know they haven't been good. They've actually been awful, but UNLV, the college team, has been here and they practice outside. They don't have an indoor practice facility. It's just called hydrating. But the NFL and the Raiders, with the money, you can imagine that they will have a state-of-the-art indoor practice facility.
UNLV plays on that turf, and I don't know if you've ever been out there for practice in the middle of the summer or in early September. That turf it'll melt your cleats. I've seen it happen. My brother-in-law playing flag football, I saw turf like that literally melt the cleats right off of his feet. It's insane how hot that gets. So I don't know how they do it and do it consistently. Maybe that's why they haven't been a good program since who knows when, ever really. But it's bad. So they're going to be on grass first of all, so that'll help a lot. That'll keep things a little cooler. But again, you're not going to have to worry about it after the first few weeks of the season. And if that bubble stays up all year, they'll be fine.
Yeah, they will. Wow, close of the first segment went by quick, so we're going to step aside. When we come back, the first part of our interview with Peter Richmond, author of Badasses, which is the definitive Raider book, in my view, one of the best ever written. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
CBS Sports Radio.
Hey, this is Tim Brown, Hall of Famer. You're listening to Silver and Black today.
Back here on the Silver and Black today, only on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. And now we get to, again, talk about one of our favorite subjects, and that's the rollicking Raiders of the 1970s, as we head out on our newsmaker line to talk to Peter Richmond, author of, I believe, the quintessential book about the John Madden era badasses, The Legend of Snake, Fu, Dr. Death, and John Madden's Oakland Raiders. May I add, I believe it to be one of the best football books ever written, by the way. Peter, thanks for joining us here on the Silver and Black today.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, that was pure labor of love. And I might add that I've just finished up a young adult biography of Madden, the man.
Really?
For Penguin Random House. It'll be out next summer, I think. They're holding it for the Hall of Fame game a year from now. So, yeah, my head, even though that book was a few years ago, my head is with John Madden and all those, especially Villapiano, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Before we go any farther, if we're going to talk anything about what I think is the man-for-man best football team ever, we got to talk about Fu, because I still don't know why history hasn't understood that there was Phil Villapiano and then there was everybody else.
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing, we Peter, had Phil on our show and just had such a great time with him. And he had a great time. So he's kind of an official, unofficial member of this team as well. But he was amazing, and I still don't understand why he's not in the Hall of Fame too. Which I know his daughter Andrea is making an effort to get him in the Hall of Fame, and we're fully supporting that as well. So we agree with you there 100%. Now, as an accomplished journalist, you've written a slew of great books on sports. I mean, from Phil Jackson. Yeah, that's right. Phil Jackson, the NFL championship game of '58 with Frank Gifford and all those things. But this book, as you said, it was personal for you. Talk about being a Raiders fan during this era, despite the fact that you were on the East Coast.
Well, it was pretty easy. I was in college in the let's say 71 to 76, took 5 years. And I was a Giant fan, still am, but I mean, there was always a West Coast game. I wasn't about to, forget college. I wasn't about to do any work. I had to see a second game. And pretty early on, I think it was probably the first time I saw a second game from Oakland, Alameda County, and I noticed that the quarterback's hair was longer than mine, and the guy he was throwing to, Bolitnikov, also had long hair coming out of the helmet. And I said, okay, this is my team. So I started paying attention just because I loved the rebel without a cause thing. I mean, when I was in college, we had demonstrations. It was a real thing back then, that sort of revolution that we had, but it wasn't such a real thing that, we were blowing things up. We had a good attitude, and that's where about rebellion. And I was a sports fan from day one, but conventional conservative sports leagues did bug me. The Giants still bug me because they're so conservative. Gifford's team bugged me because they were so buttoned down, even though I was a little kid. And the Raiders, not just the way they played the game, which was beautifully reckless, abandon, but that attitude of we can do anything we want until we get caught, and they didn't get caught much. One thing people don't, they never, not a single, now as part of the time, but not a single one of those My Raiders of 75, 76 was ever arrested.
Right.
These guys, after a win downtown, Marv Hubbard would leave the Al's Cactus Room and then punch out the plate glass window of the Korean dry cleaner next door, because it was just, it's what you did, until the Koreans called Madden and said, this has to stop. Madden called Marv in and said, Marv, you can't do this anymore. And he said, I don't get it. I leave $300 in the place every time. They can fix it. These guys, they did it all. They danced on bars. They drove motorcycles through restaurants. They did everything, but they never did it in the spirit of malicious. It was just having a good time. And Madden, I still think this is the key, and I hope Gruden gets it. I don't know if he does. You say to them, you're adults.
Yeah.
You're professional people, and I will trust you to be here on Sunday and give me everything. If you do, then do whatever the hell you want. And they did it, and it worked because they were so devoted to Madden letting them be madmen.
And Peter, Matt Gutierrez here.
Their butts off. That they stayed after practice. Just Bolitnikov would practice in the dark with a spotlight, and a putting machine turned on its side, throwing in footballs. They played with so much love and joy. So that's how I came to them. I was a New York kid watching the Giants lose, and suddenly there was a bunch of long-haired, wonderful, smiling, crazy guys led by Villapiano, who famously said to me, if nobody else, a play is not successful if after I tackle a guy, either he's bleeding or I'm bleeding, or both of us are bleeding. If neither of us are bleeding, that was not a play.
I love the Villapiano stories. He just every story that comes from Villapiano just is so authentic, especially when you hear him tell it. The amount of passion that comes out of it is just, it's amazing. And let's jump into the book a little bit here. And you just talked about all of the personalities that really grabbed you and that just made this, like you said, a labor of love. But you have to go to the top there with Al Davis, John Madden himself, and allowing these guys to be exactly who they were and kind of fit into that image that you didn't see out of, like you mentioned, teams like the Giants and the Cowboys and things like that. That's what really made this team great and propelled them into the success that they had throughout the 70s, right?
You nailed it. And Davis, and a couple points there. One is that Davis, I don't know what your generations think of him, what the residue of his legend is, but it was pretty much he's the rebel. He's fighting. He wants to move teams. He's against everybody. He first started simply as a sports junkie who was a brilliant coach. Even when he went into the Army, and he ended up getting his own Army team, and everybody in the base wondered why this guy, who was an enlisted man, was driving around with a chauffeur and an officer's cap, and he was the coach of the football team, which beat every other guy, Army football team. He was a brilliant mind. Now, he was very young. So what happens is he gets a young coach also. I think Al was 36, maybe Madden was 32. So basically they had two head coaches. At any given practice, if Madden looked up and he saw that Davis was actually working with, Bolitnikov on his footwork, although he wouldn't have had to, maybe Cliff Branch in the end zone, Madden wouldn't say, what's my owner doing here working with my receivers? It'd be another coach. They would go to dinner in the off season. They'd go to the first 5 innings of an A's game in the Raiders box. and watch baseball and draw plays, and then go out to dinner and draw plays on napkins.
Yeah, they
basically had two coaches. So Madden gets all the credit he deserves, and so does Davis. And I think Madden, no bullshit. I mean, I've met a million coaches and athletes and people through my life. Madden has a singular place for me. Stands for everything sports is supposed to stand for. He's just got it going for all the right reasons. Doesn't have an insecure, unkind bone in his body. Just loves football. But he also had this little guy, Al Davis, who was brilliant. So
and he was
a two-coach team.
Right, and he was supportive. I mean, I think for me, you mentioned, Peter, and again, we're talking to Peter Richmond, the author of Badasses, about the John Madden era of the Oakland Raiders. And I think, Peter, when you asked about the question, not sure how younger generation, I'm 48, so I'm a little bit on the cusp here, but I think a lot of folks with Al Davis's legacy, fortunately, folks like you who write books like this and go out and tell the stories about those days, the golden era, if you will, I think that helps younger fans because for a lot of them, they grew up in an era over the last 15, 20 years where the Raiders have not been relevant when it comes to winning. So I think it's important for them to understand. And also with what's happening with the protests with Colin Kaepernick and race relations and whatnot, what John Madden did so long ago to be a maverick there and to buck the system and to show he didn't care what color you were as long as you could play football and you wanted to win. I think that legacy is starting to churn back to what it should be, not losing football at the end of his life, but more about what he did to change the game.
I think it'll live on because I think proof of the Raiders moving to Vegas. Everything changes. Everything evolves. Eras change. Styles of play change. We're coming into a new era of appreciation of all I'm going to say is that before Davis became the Davis who couldn't select a draft pick to save his life, he was super savvy with Madden and Ron Wolf in those early years, drafting guys who nobody knew about, who Art Shell would turn into superstars. And also Davis, before Madden in the 60s, Davis was known as the most race-forward conscious person in football. African Americans in the AFL all wanted, that's a big generalization, but wanted to play Davis. Guys would come up to Raiders after games and say, how do I get on your team? So he had that reputation. He was a maverick, but he was also a true revolutionary. And then Madden just happened to be the perfect coach for these lunatics who love to play for him. Back to Davis for a second.
Yeah.
I think it was Clarence Davis who said to me, if Al Davis had not stopped coaching after 3 years to become commissioner for a minute and then go on to be the owner, Clarence Davis said he would have been a Hall of Fame head coach, and I think that's accurate.
Well, and Peter, I know on John Madden too. He really, they really did break the mold with him. If you look at it, here's a young coach who takes a different approach. He marries his style to the players he had on the roster. He wins the Super Bowl after 76 season, and then he retires 2 years later. Talk about what made him successful in Oakland and why he stepped away so early in his Hall of Fame career.
I think what made him successful in Oakland was the ability to relate to these guys. He would never, and he's told me this many times, he would never treat a player as if he were anything but another person. And they knew it. Mike Ciani told me the first time I walked into that locker room, and there's these guys like smoking cigarettes with long hair and who knows what else they're doing. He said, wait, is this a biker club or is this a football team? And he quickly found out that Madden appreciated each and every one of them for personality-wise. Pat Toomey told me he came in, like the first time he came in, he'd been traded from Tampa Bay. He walked in early in the morning, and Madden was there, and he looked up, and he held up a sports page and said, hey, Pat, good to see you. They'd met the day before. He said, what'd you think of this Duke game, this basketball game? And Toomey said, he just thinks I'm another guy. And so they recognized this was the anti-Lombardi, the anti-Hank Stram, the anti-Belichick. It was not my way or the highway. It was, hey, guys, tell me what your way is. And then between Davis, Wolf, me, and my assistants, we're going to find a way to win. Even if it includes, and this is my favorite, man, look at the stats from 75, 76. They had 3 fullbacks. 3 fullbacks?
Yeah.
They had 3 fullbacks. They had Van Egan and Hubbard and whoever, 3 of them each gaining like 380 yards for the season. It was brilliant.
Now, Peter, I want to go back to something you said about Jon Gruden. You asked the question, does he get it? Does he understand what this is? And I think Gruden is kind of kind of the perfect guy to bring back into the fold, because not only that personality he has, where it's very much football 1,000% of the time. He eats, breathes, sleeps everything football, but he has that throwback mentality when it comes to the way the game is supposed to be played. Very much in your face, get dirty, win it in the trenches, beat you up front, and be physical. You wonder if he gets it as a Raider. I think he's kind of the perfect Raider for this day and age, even though it is different than the 70s.
Oh, yeah. It's also different than 9 years ago when he last coached.
Yeah.
We have a whole new generation. We've got Terrell Owens deciding not to accept his Hall of Fame. I can't get over that.
Unbelievable.
He's not going to go to Canton. No, this is why I think he might be perfect. He has a healthy ego. And when people say you have a healthy ego, it's kind of damning with faint praise, right? No, Vince Lombardi had a healthy ego. In other words, my ego doesn't get in the way. Belichick, love him or hate him, he's got a healthy ego, and nothing got in the way. Parcells had a healthy ego, and that healthy ego is something that players who haven't been with that guy get infected by the success. How many players do we know have gotten better simply by putting on a Patriot uniform or fitting into a system? Maybe not getting better, but finding that there's a place in this coach's system for them. And so they're automatically better. Now, I think Gruden's reputation, because this generation of players more than any other has grown up watching, whether it's social media or Monday night or whatever, ESPN, they know this guy. They already know that the stakes are high. They are going into an arena being led by a guy who is legendary. And that, I think, is worth its weight in gold.
All right, Peter Richmond will be back here right after the break on Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Here's your host, Scott Gulbranson.
Oh, yeah. Welcome back. It is Silver and Black Today. Wow. What a great interview. The first part with Peter Richmond, author of Badasses, the quintessential Raiders book. And he got me fired up there just listening to those old stories, guys. I mean, we're in the second hour, we're going to hear the second part of the interview where he talks a little bit about his change of heart around Las Vegas, and we'll get to that. But, guys, I mean, clearly, we've heard some of these stories. He clearly is, to use a Cordascoism, a fanboy of Phil Villapiano, which we are, too, actually. There's just nobody better. But those stories, and, David, you read the book, too, right, man? I mean,
I read a little bit of it. Yeah, I
a little bit of
it. As a fan of the Raiders, it's easy to read, right?
Yeah,
so I agree 100% with a lot of what he's saying. But I get the sense that if you aren't as diehard about the Raiders, it's still an interesting book. I still think there's a lot of good tidbits in there, a lot of good stories, and it's so well written to the point that there's just something to take out of everything. If you want to just get into a time machine and go back to the 70s and just get into the grittiness of football back in the day, there's a little bit of something for everybody, and that's what's great about it.
Matt, this era for you, I know you love the lore and kind of the legends status of all these guys.
Well, that's what this book does, and especially for all of the new fans that we're going to get here in Las Vegas, especially when the Raiders actually get here in 2020. This is a good way for you to understand why there is so much history surrounding this team, and why you've got that quote-unquote quote Raider mystique, all that comes with it, that bad boy image, and it's not just about the silver and black in the colors themselves, and it's not just about the logo. These guys lived it. In the 70s, that's what they did. They created that aura because of the way that they carried themselves both on and off the field. I mean, you can look at teams around the league that have maybe a darker style logo. You look at the Ravens, things like that. Because they were so just crazy on the field with guys like Ray Lewis and things like that, and that defensive mentality, it kind of made them seem more, more angry, more badass, to use the term of the book, football. Than they were.
Yeah.
That's where it all started with the Raiders, with these 70 teams, and it's so cool to go back and look at the history. And again, for the new fans that don't quite get it or only know the Raiders over the last 2 decades, which has not been the Raiders that we all got used to. It's really fun to go back and look at it and see how they became what they are.
Well, and part of the reason we've done this summer book series with all these books about the Raiders, because most people during the summer, they have a little extra time, might take some vacation, so it's a good time to read. But at the same time as well, I'll use the story of my neighbor. My neighbor is a big Seahawks fan and obviously knows I do the show. So I started talking to him one day, and he said, "Did you buy season tickets?" So we started talking about season tickets. And I said, "Are you going to go to games, or are you just going to go when the Seahawks come down?" He said, "You know what? When the Raiders get here, they will be my team because they're going to be in Las Vegas. And I'll always be a Seahawk fan as well. And luckily for him, that's NFC, AFC, right? The only issue he'd ever have is a Super Bowl. But that's
once
a good
every
problem
4
to have.
years.
Yeah, and that's a good problem to have.
Home game every 8 years.
That's right.
Yeah.
So for him, I think he echoes what part of the reason we did this book series is so fans who are going to embrace the team when it gets here to Las Vegas, this allows them to learn about the history. And trust me, growing up in San Diego as I did, where there are a lot of Raider fans now, but growing up as a kid, they were hated, Holy Roller and all of it. You didn't get a lot of Raider history. So for people in Las Vegas, read these books. So by the time the team comes here, you'll kind of be steeped in that lore, in the mythology, if you will, because some of it is mythology at this point, and the facts of how great these teams were, right?
Yeah, that's the biggest point is, like I said, the last 20 years, the Raiders have not been what they were traditionally. They were named the team of the decades because they went to a Super Bowl in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, AFC Championship game in the 90s. I mean, this team won consistently for 40 straight years, and then nothing for the last 18. I mean, they've been pretty much the laughingstock of the NFL for a while now. So go back and understand, because it's going to be your team whether you like it or not. We heard the same thing with hockey coming to town. I'm not going to switch. I've been a Ducks fan or a Kings fan or whatever fan for 20 years. I'm not switching allegiances, and every single one of those people has a Knights jersey hanging in their closet right now.
Well, and I think that's the thing. There is something to be said for, the team you grow up with. And it's funny, I had a college buddy that David reminds me a lot by the name of Jay Sapovitz, who, if you're listening,
I hope that's a good thing.
It is. You're a little nicer than Jay is, but no, Jay's a great guy. But he, growing up, Philadelphia Eagles fan, like Philadelphia everything. We were in college. It was just constant Philly, Philly, Philly. I couldn't stand it, right? And then he moves. He's now a big business dude, and he lives in Boston. His kids were born there, grew up there, so he follows the Patriots, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, people like to give him crap.
Unfortunate for him.
Yeah, it's just luck of the draw where you live. But our buddies got on him a lot about it because he's like, oh, now you're a Patriot fan. You abandon your team. And I have a different perspective as I age. I know there's people out there who could never consider, if you're a Raider fan and you move to Houston, of becoming a Texan fan. You don't give up that other allegiance. What it means, though, is that in your town, a team, and especially what the Raiders are doing here in Las Vegas with the investment they're making in the community and the investment we're making in them, it does change things. And so there's a lot of folks who would never, ever, ever in their life had considered being Raiders fans are going to be Raiders fans, David, when it comes to 2020.
Yeah, and this is like the Golden Knights, and I was one of these people who thought I would never change allegiances to another team. But the Golden Knights came and they changed that, and I think people are already converting to the Raiders. Since the Raiders already exist, whereas the Golden Knights, you didn't have a franchise to go off of. You couldn't follow this team before the 2017-18 season. But the Raiders, you can look at this team now, and you could look at guys like Derek Carr, Amari Cooper, Khalil Mack, and you could already get used to these guys. You could buy their jerseys right now. And I already see a ton of people wearing Carr jerseys around town. People could get ready for this team. And people could already get engulfed in sort of the history of the Raiders because all of that's already built.
Well, and I took a picture last weekend, and we tweeted it out from Silver and Black today, Silver Black, the number 2 day on Twitter. And it was of Costco, right? And you go to Costco right now, here we are in July, and you have Raiders tents, Raiders chairs, Raiders wagons that you can pull. Then I go into 7-Eleven to buy my kids a Slurpee the other day, Raiders stuff on a rack. Then I'm in Smith's, which if you're in other parts of the country, it's Kroger. Kroger owns Smith's here in town. And in the grocery store yesterday, as I was picking some butter up, I see...
Thanks for the shopping list.
Yeah, you're right. Hey, man, 22 years of marriage, you just go do what you need to do. So I'm in the grocery store, and here it is again, July. Raiders hats, Raiders T-shirts, Raiders keychains, Raiders barbecue covers, all kinds of stuff. So the town is getting ready for it, and I think that knowing the history of this team, it is so rich and just so amazing to follow it. So if you haven't done so, they need to.
I mean, I remember pre-Amazon, pre-internet days trying to find Raiders gear around town, especially when my kids were first born. I mean, my son's 13 now, and so, not too long ago, but even then, trying to find Raider gear, trying to find
right?
and not just shirts, hats, jerseys, novelty items, things like that, stuff you just like to collect and have, keychains, all that nonsense. It's hard to find that stuff, and now you can't turn your head without finding it.
Right, and especially since Vegas has always been a front-runner town, so if the Cowboys were good, you'd see Cowboys gear. If the Broncos were good, all that stuff.
Get that out of here.
Good conversation, but also we're going to address next, David Stepanian is going to walk us through, were the 1976 Super Bowl champion Raiders, they won Super Bowl 11, were they the greatest team of all time? We're going to talk about that after the break on Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
This is Cliff Branch, formerly of the Oakland Raiders, 3-time Super Bowl champ, 4-time Pro Bowl, and you listen to the Silver and Black Show.
Cliff Branch. By the way, that guy, I think, he's probably 20 years some older than I am, maybe a little more than that, and I still think he could beat me in a race. That guy, when we had him in here, he's still fast. That guy's in great shape. What a dude.
He let us wear his rings, man.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
We put on Cliff Branch's Super Bowl ring.
That was pretty cool.
That was great.
Yeah, he has 3 of them, so we all got to wear one.
That was great,
at the time, so that was fun. You're back here, broadcasting live. We are from the Dollar Loan Center, don'tbebroke.com studios. This is Silver and Black. Today, we talk all Raiders all the time. And earlier in the hour, Peter Richmond, the author of Badasses, was on. The second part of that interview is coming up in hour number 2, so don't go anywhere with that. Now, as part of that, in the book, you'll see central to that, because it was a John Madden era, the 1976 Raiders who won Super Bowl 11 against the Minnesota Vikings. That team, Peter Richmond said during the interview, he believes the best team of all time. Now, we had David Stepanian kind of start to dig deep on this and really look at it from a younger guy's perspective to kind of take out some of the emotion for those of us who are older and might remember some of this. And look at and ask the question, was the 76 Raiders team, David, the best or at least one of the best of all time?
I had a lot of fun doing research. So when you emailed me a few days ago and asked me to start this discussion, I immediately thought back to what I know of the 76 Raiders and that team that went 13-1 and Ken Stabler throwing 27 touchdowns, about 2,700 yards. And I also encourage anyone in town in Vegas to go to the Raiders meeting place in Town Square. That's
the Preview Center. Yeah,
the Preview Center, because they have some really cool stuff there, including the 3 Super Bowl rings you guys were just talking about, Cliff Branch. And they go through the history, and they play that epic NFL Films music when you're in there, and you could see all these historic plays like the Sea of Hands. And this is just the 70s Raiders team in general was a team that was poised to win the Super Bowl eventually. If they didn't get the Super Bowl championship in 76, 77, they would have been known as perhaps the greatest team to not win a Super Bowl, one of the best teams to not win a Super Bowl.
Well, that's right. And David, they went to the AFC Championship game 5 times in a row, 72 through 77, getting to the Super Bowl after the 76 season. So they were 1 and 4 in those championship games during that decade.
Yeah, and they went 2-3 against the Steelers in that decade as well in the playoffs. And I feel like if you take that Steelers team out of the equation, I mean, just how dominant would this Raiders team have been? Now let's look at the 76 team in particular, and it was just a fun team. That was just a fun ride, and just seeing all these highlight reel plays and the dominating performance in Super Bowl 11 against the Minnesota Vikings, 32-14. Fred Biletnikoff is the only wide receiver MVP in history to get less than 100 yards in the game. He got 4 receptions for 78 yards. John Madden, just such an eccentric coach, and you already know about how great of a broadcaster he was, and look a little bit more into when he was coaching the Raiders. And, 1 year he misses the playoffs, and then he retires the next, and Tom Flores takes over from there. So much of that team, as Peter Richmond said during that first part of the interview, Matt, was John Madden. John Madden, like Al Davis in many aspects, that was a match made in heaven. And John Madden, with the players on that team, basically let them do what they wanted to do as long as they showed up for practice and they played hard. He let them be them. There's a mutual respect. He wasn't one of these hard-ass coaches that gets you on you for going out late that night and, these bed checks and all that kind of stuff. He was, do your job on the field and you can be who you want to be off the field. Just make sure you show up to work and do what you're supposed to do. And fortunately for Madden, his team loved the game of football. Mm-hmm. These are guys who just loved the game. Now, the Raiders were the only one-loss team, or they're the second one-loss team ever to avenge their only loss in the playoffs. Yeah. They got their butts handed to them by the Patriots early on in the season, and then went on to win a close game in the playoffs. So are they one of the best teams ever? I think they're the best Raiders team, no doubt, and they should definitely be in the conversation of one of the best teams ever, because when you look at teams like Joe Montana's 49ers and Troy Aikman's Cowboys, this is a team that has the same sort of mythos and the same sort of legend, and that's the aura that teams that are regarded as one of the best ever, they all have this same sort of sentiment. Well, and guys, you can't really... So when you talk about the greatest teams of all time, I think one of the problems and one of the issues that people have when you have discussions like this, whether you're sitting on the stoop or you're at a game or wherever you're at, is you can't really compare eras. Like, you can't compare the 76 Raiders, even though they played a vertical game and were far ahead of their time. You can't compare them to teams now like the Patriots or the Eagles or any of the teams who have won the championship in the last 10 years. It's just a different game, right, Matt? It is. It's a completely different game. I mean, today's game, you look at how, I don't want to say easily, but the frequency with which quarterbacks put up 4,000-plus yards and approach 30 touchdowns every year, and it's because it's such a passing game. There's so much more utilization of backs coming out of the backfield. Tight ends have become such huge weapons. And then the way that receivers are used, I mean, it's such a different game. It's so much easier to rack up these yards. It's not only that, you don't have guys like Jack Tatum and George Atkinson running across the middle of the field, literally taking helmets off of guys on every other play. You can't do that anymore. So that fear factor has been lessened quite a bit. Not that you don't have big hits, but those 70s teams, and I feel the 70s teams were the reason that 76 team is largely overlooked as being one of the great teams is because they only got that one Super Bowl. Yeah. That 70s era, you had the Cowboys win 2 Super Bowls, you had the Dolphins win 2 Super Bowls, and one of those they won 3 Super Bowls. One of them came with undefeated season, right? Yep. The 1972 Dolphins. And then you had the Steelers win 4 Super Bowls in that time period. So you look at the Raiders and go, well, they only got 1 out of that, even though they were probably the best overall team throughout the course of that decade. But even that second Dolphins Super Bowl, it was a 1-loss season. They only lost 1 game in their defending championship season from that 14-0 year. And the Raiders beat them in the Sea of Hands the following year. Yeah. So that was, I feel like, that just catapulted the Raiders into just the amount of confidence it gives you to beat the 2-time defending Super Bowl champs, and then they went on to do it to the Steelers. Yeah, and nothing to taking nothing away from great coach Tom Flores, who should be in the Hall of Fame. There's no doubt. But that team that Madden built, he left after the 77 season. Then they missed the playoffs. Or I should say after the 78 season, they missed the playoffs in Tom Flores' next season, and then the second season under Flores, they win a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. That was largely Madden's team of players. Now, that argument to me doesn't hold much water because the coach has to coach, but clearly that team was set up for success, and I count that 1980 team as part of the 70s legacy. They are, but Snake wasn't there. So that's true. Snake wasn't there, Fu wasn't there. There were certain guys from that 70s team that weren't there for that second Super Bowl, and obviously a whole lot of them, most of them weren't there for that
that Los Angeles team in '83. So it's kind of the next generation of Raider teams, those two Super Bowl champions. But man, if that's let's say you don't have the Immaculate Reception, then the Raiders play the Dolphins in their undefeated season, and who knows what could have happened there. They might not be popping champagne corks at this point.
They beat the crap out of them the next season in the Raiders season.
So I mean, it's just the one Super Bowl kind of crushed what could have been one of the greatest teams ever.
Great discussion, guys. We're going to step aside for the top of the hour sports break, and when we come back, we'll talk more Raiders. Vincent Bonsignore, Vinny, joins us from the LA Daily News. He had a story today about the Raiders' move to Las Vegas. You're listening to Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
The Las Vegas sports scene is fast-paced and ever-changing. Get a shot of adrenaline, sports adrenaline, Saturday morning from 8 to 10 on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
The most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbranson and Matt Gutierrez.
All right, we're back. Welcome back to hour number 2. This is Silver and Black today, broadcasting live from the Dollar Loan Center, don'tbebroke.com studios. We talk Raider football. We're the only all-Raiders show in Las Vegas. Yes, we're early. It's not until 2020 the team gets here. Doesn't matter. This is a Raiders town, and we are talking Raiders football. And we want to talk now, 3 years ago today, a very sad day in the history of Raiders football as we lost the late, great Ken Stabler. And we just wanted to send out our thoughts to his family. It's 3 years, but it never gets easy, and especially when you're talking about one of the greatest football players to ever play the game, and just an amazing, likable guy. Of course, the career of Ken Stabler started in 1970 with the Raiders through 1984. And guys, I mean, it's Ken Stabler. I mean, the Snake. It's just he is one of the greatest of all time in football. But the Raiders' history around Stabler, and we heard some of the stories around him with Peter Richmond earlier. But a guy that I wish could have been around to see the team move to Vegas. He would have been great here as well.
Wish he could have seen his bust in Canton.
Yes,
I mean,
there was no
reason to hold him out of the Hall of Fame for as long as they did, and then to put him in posthumously was frustrating, I think, as a Raider fan and just for football fans in general. But you look at Snake, just physical appearance. If he didn't embody everything that was those 1970s teams with that long hair flowing out of the bottom of that helmet and just that demeanor, he was the ultimate Raider, and he was the leader of that team, and everybody followed suit. They kind of filled in behind him and let him show them the way. I mean, lefty quarterback, could get out and run. I mean, that Snake nickname was perfect, and man, could he throw the ball.
Well, and you talk about the Hall of Fame initial snub, and then of course posthumously going in, which again I hate to see that. I worked with Fred, the Tarkanian family when they were trying to get Coach Tarkanian from a basketball perspective into the Hall of Fame. They were able to do that before he passed. That's why, just real quick, I know we're talking about Stabler, but that's why Tom Flores, Cliff Branch, all these guys, Phil Villapiano, need to be in the Hall of Fame, and they need to be in the Hall of Fame now.
And there's no reason for them not to be.
No, it's Al Davis.
Through and look
Al Davis.
Look at their career
Cliff Branch
numbers.
told us that.
Yeah, and it's not, and it drives me nuts because I do it every year when they start talking about the Hall of Fame. But Cliff Branch and Lynn Swann, and the reason I make that comparison is because of the era that they played in, and how many times they faced each other. And if you did a blind comparison, it's not even close. And you can't even talk about Swann and his 4 Super Bowls because Cliff Branch, as we just mentioned a minute ago, has 3 of them. There is no reason in the world for Branch not to be in the Hall of Fame.
There's not. And again, Ken Stabler, we lost him 3 years ago today. The thing, too, people know about his career. They know clearly what he did on the field, but did a lot of charitable work, too, with the XOXO Stabler Foundation. Did a lot of stuff that I don't know that everyone knows about after the case. But that was the Raider way. We see it here in the community already, and Stabler embodied that. You talked about on the field, the image, the long hair, and all the things that went along with it. But I loved Richmond's story about his in the book about the Corvette getting hit in the parking lot at the old El Rancho. Just a great ambassador for the game, too. And, of course, last week we talked about CTE. After Ken died from colon cancer, they studied his brain and found that he had CTE as well, and it's talked about in the book about him and also in several other books. But clearly a good guy, and Raider Nation misses him. But clearly something that, and I hope they do something here to honor him at the new stadium as well. There's so many Raiders you can honor. They don't retire jerseys, so you have to do something else. But my guess is they'll have some sort of ring of honor, and of course the snake will be up there. And if you're a younger Raiders fan and you haven't gone back, David, like you did, and watched some of that film of this guy play the game, I easily could come in today's game and play. And I
totally see now why so many people still wear Stabler jerseys, still see Plunkett jerseys as well. This is a guy who in the Raider community is embraced, loved, cherished, and he's always going to be a part of that sort of Raiders allure, and he's going to be, when you discuss greatest Raiders ever, he's always going to be in the discussion, top 5.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And, I mean, you look at the Raiders' quarterback history, clearly him and Jim Plunkett, because of the Super Bowl wins, pop up, Matt. But a great lineage of quarterbacks, and that's because the Raiders were ahead of their time when it came to the vertical passing game, at a time when quarterbacks handed the ball off and just kind of ran
Going
the
back
offense.
to the Mad Bomber.
Yeah, to Darryl LaMonica. Yeah. But that's why they got him. In fact, there was one of our favorite guys on Twitter, AFL Godfather. He sent out a video yesterday, tweeted a video showing LaMonica with the Bills, because that's where the Raiders traded for with Buffalo, and him throwing long balls and the receivers were nowhere near. And then he gets on the Raiders, and suddenly he's got the speed.
Well, when you have a guy like Branch that can run underneath anything you throw out there, man. Yeah. So fast.
Yeah, but the Ken Stabler Foundation still does a lot of great work, and so we invite you to do that. But if you go back and look at those numbers of what Stabler did during his career, and towards the end, just like any player, had some injuries and things like that, but was always there for the game, did a little bit of broadcasting. I don't know if you guys remember, but I remember this vividly. He was on Saturday Night Live in a skit for a fictional product called the Lung Brush. And he shoved it, they were showing, and it was funny stuff. So Ken Stabler was big in the culture, too. I don't know that people understand that as well, as not only in football, but he kind of transcended those things and is in the video game and has done a bunch of other things and been out there. And Jake the Snake Roberts, you're a wrestling fan, right?
Yeah.
Jake the Snake Roberts, that's paying homage to Ken Stabler. That's how he got his name.
That's awesome.
So
Jake the Snake was one of the best back in the 80s, man.
I never was into wrestling. So, like, my little brother was, but he had all the toys and all that stuff because he was younger then. I just never.
I've gone through eras. When I was a kid, then I have a brother that's 10 years younger than me, so I had an era with him watching, and now my son. So I missed for years, and then I come back. Yeah.
Wow. I like luchadors.
It's fun. You like the little guys down.
David, do you watch wrestling?
The border.
Do you watch?
I did in the 90s during the Attitude Era, like anyone else. But I know Jake the Snake only because of the documentary Beyond the Mat, which is a fantastic documentary, and I recommend that to anyone.
Yes,
but it doesn't paint Jake in the best light.
No,
I mean,
so if you're Jake the Snake, don't watch that documentary if you don't want to see Jake the Snake being Jake the Snake.
You're right though about the jerseys. You still see a lot of Stabler jerseys. Of course, current players generate a lot of revenue because they're of mind, especially with younger fans. That's who you grew up with. So if you're 12 years old right now, Derek Carr or Amari Cooper, whoever your guy is, Marshawn Lynch. But it is remarkable how many people you see in a Stabler jersey, in a Plunkett jersey, in a Bo Jackson. I think you see that
more with the Raiders than probably any other franchise. And I don't know if that's because they do such a good job of bringing their alumni back into the fold so consistently, or if it's because they just have so many amazing players. You mentioned Bo Jackson, and then you have anybody from the 70s. Really, I mean, I see Lyle Alzado jerseys out there. Howie Long, Marcus Allen. I mean, these guys, many fantastic Raiders from the past.
We need a Twos jersey for our backboard here. If you're watching on any of our video streaming, like we have these posters and stuff we're building here, we're going to get some other Vegas
sports.
Sports.
Of Sloth up there with the Raiders shirt on.
How many guys can you name? I just saw someone wearing a Bo Jackson jersey yesterday at the Summer League.
How
many people can you? How many? Yeah, I have one
David,
too. But how many people can you? He only played 4 seasons in the NFL or something like that.
Yeah, but he was just. You know what?
And he's still selling jerseys to this day.
By the way, I came home from work. I got to tell you this. I came home from work last week, and it's summer. Kids cooped up in the house. It's getting hot, and the kids bored. My wife went out and got the little classic Nintendo thing that they sell now, which has all the games built in.
It's awesome.
Bo Jackson,
Tech Mobile, baby.
Mobile, yeah.
Oh my god!
You can't stop that guy in that game.
No,
right?
No, $60. If you're a Raiders fan, just go buy it to play Tech Mobile.
Yeah,
I mean it's fantastic.
You could just run around the field with Bo.
Yeah,
they're just back and forth across the field. You couldn't catch them.
It's awesome. But that's the thing with the jerseys. That David, you were talking about it. You're seeing stuff everywhere, right? And according to the Bay Area media, nobody here cares about the Raiders, which is BS because you are seeing it. And you know what? I think this year, with what they've done in the community, this year when the NFL season kicks off here in 8 weeks, whatever it is.
Yeah.
We are going to see, I think, Las Vegas in full Raider love fest. I think you're going to see it this year. The team's going to be better. You got Gruden. You got all these things building up, David, and I think you're going to see it this year. Before
the team even announced the move to when they were still talking about going to L.A. with the Rams and building the stadium there, long before any Raiders, I already saw a ton of Raiders jerseys around here. When Jamarcus Russell got drafted, I saw fields of Jamarcus Russell jerseys in that offseason.
Anybody who bought a Russell jersey is just the ultimate delusional Raiders fan. And we know you're out there, but if you ever got on board with Russell,
I actually, okay, I'm going to be totally honest. Wait a minute. No, but look, so a few weeks after he got drafted, I went to, it was like Front Row Sports at the Fashion Show Mall. It's Lid's locker room now, and I bought a Jamarcus Russell jersey, true story.
Oh my gosh.
Like 2 days later, I had the receipt. 2 days later, I went and I returned.
You returned
it? Like 2 days later, I returned. I was like, I'm not having a...
If only Al Davis would have done that with the actual player.
No kidding. We don't like him. Send him back.
Yeah, we would have been out of here. It would have been a much different situation for the Raiders over the next few years after that.
Why you got to bring up things like that? What a bust he was.
I know. Somebody
could have had Megatron. They drafted Russell.
Somebody shared that picture of him the other day in the big fur coat coming off the private plane. And then it followed up with him in the wife beater T-shirt with the
purple drink.
Purple drink.
Yeah, that's the one. Wow.
In Alabama.
What a bum. What a bum.
But again, I think Las Vegas is going to be Raider crazy this winter, this fall. Anyway, we're going to step aside. When we come back, we're going to be joined by one of my favorite guys in the media, Vinny Bonsignore from the LA Daily News. He did a story today on the Raiders moving to Las Vegas. Really good stuff. Make sure you go read it to be prepared for that. We'll be back right after this on Silver and Black Today.
.org. Sponsored by Immunize Nevada. Aired in cooperation with the Nevada Broadcasters Association and this station.
CBS Sports Radio.
This is Cliff Branch, formerly of the Oakland Raiders, 3-time Super Bowl champ, 4-time Pro Bowl, and you listen to the Silver and Black Show.
All right. Thanks again, Cliff, for bringing us back in from the break. And we are going to shift now and go out on our newsmaker line to talk to one of our favorite guys in the media. And that, of course, is LA Daily News NFL columnist Vinny Bonsignore. Vinny, man, how you doing today, excuse me. See, I don't even know what time it is.
Well, you're in Las Vegas, so it could be any time, right?
That's right. Well, it's one of those days. But I'll tell you what. So you have a story out this morning about the Raiders' move to Las Vegas, and I know you just tweeted it out, and we tweeted it out earlier. And you can follow Vinny at Daily News Vinny, Vinny. And a great story. One of the things, too, I just got to say off the top, Mark Davis has had a 702 area code on his cell phone for how long?
Since the late 1990s, and a little bit of a funny backstory to that. Back in those days, if you remember, we had national roaming charges, and those got pretty costly. So a friend of Mark's told him, hey, look, the 702 area code, Las Vegas area code, allows for national calls without incurring the roaming charges. So Mark, not too proud to jump on a deal, jumped on that deal, and he's kept that number ever since. And it's kind of a funny anecdote to all of this, because when he calls the various people he needs to call in Las Vegas making this deal happen, the move to Las Vegas, they're automatically surprised, that thinking that he's already immersed himself so deeply into the community that he went ahead and got the 702 area code phone number. But in reality, he's had it for over 20 years.
Wow. And I think some of the people mistake Mark's thriftiness, right? Because people talk about it all the time, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't care how much money you have or how much money you don't have. If you're thrifty and you're saving money, always a good thing. And sometimes I think he gets a bad rap about that. Now, you got to sit down with him, and I know one of the issues that has always been discussed kind of quietly on the side, or even when we've dealt with team officials, is that delicate balance between we're moving to Las Vegas, but yet we're going to be playing in Oakland most likely for 2 years. There's nowhere else to go. And what was the impression you got from him? Because he's here all the time. He was again at the WNBA game last night. He's been at the last 2 games. He was a staple at the Vegas Golden Knights hockey games during the playoff run. What did you learn from him when you sat down to talk about that angle?
Well, from the very beginning, throughout this whole process, even if you back it up a year before Las Vegas came into the picture, their pursuit of Los Angeles. One thing that he's made very clear, and I've always felt like Mark Davis has been as earnest as you can imagine, as anyone can imagine in this situation. He never really wanted to leave Oakland. This was never about, and that's no disrespect to Los Angeles or Las Vegas. It was just the reality of the situation in terms of trying to get a stadium built in Oakland and where he really wanted to stay, but it just wasn't happening. So obviously he had to look elsewhere. But that said, it was never personal toward the fans in the Bay Area, who he loves and adores and respects and considers the best fans in the world. And so, when we're talking about what is really an unprecedented situation where a team is saying goodbye to one market over a prolonged period of time, while also, preparing for a hello in a new market, in a new home, there is a balancing act. And one thing that has always struck me about him is the care that he's trying to take in order not to offend his current market. And it goes beyond just the fact that they have to sell tickets. That's taking care of itself. Anytime somebody falls off on their season tickets, somebody's right there to gobble them up in Oakland. It's not really about that. He sincerely does not want to come across as somebody who's rubbing anybody's face in it. He would love for Oakland to be a part of this. I mean, he looks at the Raider Nation literally as a Raider Nation, whether you're talking about Oakland, Las Vegas, Los Angeles. So to answer your question, though, for sure, he doesn't want to. He feels and senses that delicate balancing act. He's doing the best he can to make sure no one gets offended throughout this.
We're talking to Vinny Bonsignore from the LA Daily News here on Silver and Black today.
Hey, Vinny, Matt here. Good to talk to you again.
Good to talk to you, man.
Man, one of the things that you mentioned in your article was his presence here in Vegas now and how you can kind of find him everywhere. We were at the Aces game the other night, and he strolled in before the opening tip, and he's not one of these guys that comes in late and tries to get that fanfare and people noticing him and then, will dip out early before the game's over. He got there early, sat courtside, watched the entire game, shook some hands before he left, and got up and walked out like any other fan, right up the stairs, through the concourse, like normal guy. His presence here has become just he's around. It's not like he's trying to steal the spotlight. He's just around all the time now, and you kind of highlighted that in that article. He's really becoming part of the fabric of Las Vegas already.
Yeah, and expect that to continue. He's obviously been a big fan of the Warriors up in the Bay Area, attends their games, and will continue to do that, in Las Vegas with the Golden Knights and the Aces, who he told me, we look at those teams not as competitors, but as brothers and sisters in this, quest to build Las Vegas out as a professional sports market. So he's learning from them. I'm sure they're learning from him. He's rooting for them because, we're still talking about ticket sales, but the viability of all of these franchises doing well in Las Vegas bodes well for all three of the teams and the community. So he wants them to succeed, and he's there to help them, and vice versa. So that's pretty cool to see, and it really is cool to see him getting about town and being a member of the community, not somebody that looks down on anybody, not an owner and you're, a fan. He literally wants to be part of the community, as he says, a good neighbor, which he felt like that's been important for the Raiders wherever they've been, to be a good neighbor.
No doubt. And I argue, if not one of the most accessible owners in all professional sports. Now, the other thing, too, that we always talk about on this show, Vinny, is this misconception that there's not excitement about the Raiders here, that they're going to play second fiddle to the NHL team. A lot of our brothers and sisters in the Bay Area like to write that and talk about that, and I understand why they're playing to an audience, so I get it. At the same time, Vinny, you looked into that and you kind of went around town, talked to different folks, including politicians and leaders in the resort community and people in real estate and fan clubs. What did you find in your time here about the excitement and kind of the build around the Raiders coming here?
I think that there's tremendous excitement. Obviously it is a prolonged process because, unfortunately, there's not a viable temporary stadium in place in that community, so they have to stay in Oakland, in the Bay Area, and while the new stadium is being built. But you can feel their presence, and they've done a good job. The practice facility is going to be in Henderson. The Showcase Center is in Las Vegas. They're likely to have training camp in Reno, up north. So they want to spread their wings throughout the state and throughout the community. And I truly believe, in talking to folks, they're bracing for this arrival. And unfortunately, it has to be 2 years down the road. But there is an excitement, and I can say that, no disrespect to the Golden Knights, but the NHL and the NFL are on two completely different levels. And Las Vegas will see that when, on a game day, when the Raiders are at home, that opening weekend and that first season and on and on and on into the future, you're going to see how big the NFL is. And I have no doubt that Las Vegas is going to welcome them with open arms. They already have.
Oh, yeah.
When you look at their, they sold out on their club seats pretty quickly, and 70% of those tickets sold were from Las Vegas residents. The other 30% prominently from Oakland and Los Angeles, but 70% stepping up immediately to purchase the most expensive tickets in the house outside of the suite is a good sign, and the Raiders expect that ratio to maintain as they put the rest of their tickets on sale. So there is an excitement, and you can feel it.
Vinny, before we let you go, I want to talk about the 2019 season, and again, you mentioned it in your article, because that's the big mystery right now is where are they going to play, and you talked about both San Antonio, you talked about San Diego, and then the potential to sign another one-year lease to stay in Oakland. Where do you feel they will end up playing, and if it's not Oakland, what's the best scenario for them?
Well, ideally for them, it will be at the Oakland Alameda Coliseum. There's some things that are out of their control as far as that goes. I mean, you have to look at it from the Coliseum's standpoint, and what are they going to do to you hope that they're out in a position that they want to stick it to the Raiders, but you never know. So you have to account for that possibility. Short of that, there are other options in the Bay Area. Levi Stadium is an option. Cal is an option. Presumably Stanford might be an option. But if it doesn't happen in the Bay Area, then you will start talking about and hearing about, maybe San Antonio, which had for years been, a potential landing spot for the Raiders, and San Diego. Qualcomm Stadium is still standing, so that's a possibility. In my heart, and just instincts tells me that one way or another it's going to get done in the Bay Area, but it will be interesting, this time next year, probably right around February, March or so, when they have to make a decision. Hopefully it's made before then, and it is in the Bay Area, but we'll see what happens sometime after this current season.
All right, we've been talking to Vinny Bonsignore from the LA Daily News, who we just tweeted out your story, Vinny, so people can read it about the time he spent with Mark Davis and Mark Bedane this past week in Las Vegas around the move. Listen, man, I appreciate the time as always. The ink, as we used to say, remember, in the business, the ink is still wet on your story, so we appreciate you joining us. And I know we're going to have you on a lot more during the year, so thanks for doing it, and have a great weekend, my friend.
All right, you too. Looking forward to the coming season.
All right. Vincent Bonsignore, LA Daily News, has been our guest here on the Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio 1140. We're going to step aside, pay some bills, and when we come back at the bottom of the hour, our second part of the interview with Peter Richmond on his book, Badasses, about the 1970s Raiders. This is Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM.
CBS Sports Radio. Help us talk the Silver and Black. Call us at 702-889-5978. Here's Matt Gutierrez and your host, Scott Gulbranson, on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM.
All right, welcome back. And now we jump into our second part of our interview with Badasses author Peter Richmond. Yeah, and I think you have a situation, you mentioned the times being different, right? And you talk about it in the book. And I was talking about during the break before we got you on the air with Matt here, and that is that during that era, and you can look at this from the NFL to any other big corporation that people work for, and that is the relationship between the employee and the employer has changed, right? Exactly. Back then, and you talk about it in your book, and all the players say, look, it didn't matter the name on the back of my jersey. It was who I was representing, and that was the Raiders and each other. Now, today, it doesn't matter if you're the NFL or you're another corporation and you're an accountant. There's the loyalty and the transactional nature of employment is much different, and that's changed the game too, hasn't it, Peter?
Oh, completely. But then you can say that about basically any, whether it's Silicon Valley or any industry. Yes, the thing that I like about Gruden being from the not a prior generation, but it's what he started coaching 17 years ago.
Yeah,
is that he clearly adapts. When he used to interview quarterbacks, you could tell that he wasn't coming in like a lot of people saying, "This is what I think. Tell me what you think about you." It was like he wanted to know stuff. So I know he's learning, and I know that the transactional nature is all for the good. I also think that it's possible that there are a lot of players who might be thinking a year from now, depending on what happens this year. We have a chance. I mean, 6-10 last year, and then now you come in this year. Say it's a decent year. Let's hope for what 8 and 8, 9 and 7. But then, hey, we're moving to Vegas in this incredible stadium, a town where the old Raiders, as you said, are establishing a presence. But it's also the entertainment capital of the world.
True.
And one of the things that's changed for sure in this game is it's going from blue collar to pure entertainment. I just remembered something about the difference between the eras, I have to tell you. Art Toms was the starting right defensive tackle on the Raiders in that Super Bowl year of 76. He made, I guess he might have made starting money, what was that, $30,000? So when I interviewed him for this book a few years ago, he said, "Oh, yeah, meet me at this laundromat." And I met him at a laundromat. Here's a guy who played in the Super Bowl, has a Super Bowl ring. And I met him at his laundromat, where he was taking quarters out of the machines. That's how he was making his living, running laundromats. That doesn't happen anymore.
No.
Anyway. So, no, it is high entertainment. So I think there's a possibility. Not only are they going to be getting rubbed off on by Gruden's aura and try to play for him better, they also know the whole world's watching. And that's where my thinking has changed, having watched the Golden Knights.
Okay.
And I was thinking back when I was writing for Vice, I was thinking about the NFL and its institutional model. And then, where's the fit here? Oakland, the port town versus, no. Having seen what happened to that amazing hockey team, which captured everybody's imagination, even made the NHL interesting for friends of mine who didn't watch the NHL. So that might have started something that could lead to something pretty special.
I'm glad you're saying this now about the Golden Knights, because like Scott mentioned early on, I'm born and raised here in Vegas. My family's been here since the 20s. And
how can that be? It wasn't there in the 20s.
No, you know what? My great-grandfather was an engineer on the railroad and came over from the Midwest when they were building the dam, and my grandfather was born here in the late 20s. And we've been here since.
That
so
is cool.
Yeah. So we're Vegas roots through and through, man. So, but yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Golden Knights, and I think what the Golden Knights were able to do was open up everybody's eyes outside of Vegas who maybe doesn't get the sense of community that this city has, and that there are real people here, and that it goes beyond the Strip. Because in that piece you mentioned that you wrote for Vice, it very much felt like, reading it myself, it felt like an attack on our city, that there aren't real people here, and that there's not anything sustainable, and that you're not gonna thrive here as a sports organization. And then the Golden Knights show up, and everything suddenly changed. And it sounds like they even changed your opinion, which was, I would have to say, on the negative there.
On the grounds that might incriminate me as a former snarky writer for former Vice Sports. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. When they call you the day before or 2 days before, and they say, "You got 24 hours. What's your take on Vegas? You're the Raider guy. The Raiders going to Vegas." I said, "I got it." Found out. That's the nature of the biz. Mm-hmm. But as a sports now, seeing the bigger picture that the Golden Knights brought in. There's no doubt in my mind now that it's a whole new chapter. And again, if there's anything you can say about the evolution of the NFL from the blue collar, the gray flannel New York Giants to the blue collar Raiders up to now, we've gone into full entertainment mode. And therefore, what's going to be happening in 2019 in your town is going to be more, I think, than just a new team coming in. Can Vegas support an NFL team? I think you got to look at it a whole new way. New thing happening. All bets are off.
Ah, nice. And again, we're joined by Peter Richmond, the author of Badasses: The Legends of Snake Food, Dr. Death, and John Madden's Oakland Raiders. Now, as we continue this conversation, Peter, about Las Vegas and how your thinking has evolved on it, I understand it, though. Like, when I read your piece, being someone who lives in Las Vegas, my wife was also born and raised here, the child of two Cuban immigrants who came here because they knew gaming from Cuba. So very interesting stories. And next time you're out here, we really would love to take you out and talk to you about some of that history. It'd be kind of cool.
No, you got to write your book, man.
Yeah, there you go. But, I understand your point of view, too, because you say it and you're very transparent about it, as you are with most of your writing, which is like, hey, look, I was a fan, right? I liked the Raiders, and so it was very personal to you. So when the Raiders were on the cusp of leaving Oakland and all of that happened, I understand it, too. I grew up in San Diego. San Diego being a very small market, and the Chargers leaving there, too. I have all my friends I grew up with and family who invested everything in the Chargers. And when the Chargers left, and the 4-year period it took them to leave as well, it really created that rift. And I think that the only difference I've seen, and maybe you can explain it to me a little bit, even though your thinking is evolved, and that is people in San Diego, of course, hate the Spanos family. They hate them for leaving.
They do,
but they don't.
I was a staff.
Go ahead.
I was a staff writer at the San Diego Union.
Oh,
this guy named Spanos came in 1981 and said, "I'm going to get 10% of this team." And my sports editor said, "I want you to write about this because it's 10% now." But so I was there. Spanos.
Yeah, when he took it.
So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and he obviously a very different owner than Gene Klein. But I think that the interesting thing that Matt and I always talk about here on this show is that when you look at what's happening, even the people in San Diego are still fired up and they're still firing away at the Spanos. They're taking out billboards and all that stuff. Is the hate seems to be on the owner with the Raider fans in Oakland, and again, not all of them. But with the Raider fans who are really, really still upset and just going crazy about it, it seems as though, yes, Mark Davis takes the brunt of it, but they also are very quick to throw rocks at Las Vegas when in reality, Las Vegas is, the state gave the money to get the team here, but in reality, that's really not the issue. The issue is Oakland and what Davis couldn't do there and what Oakland couldn't do for Davis, obviously.
Correct. Marketplaces, there's no way you can keep, as much as a robber baron sort of antitrust deal this league always is. No, the free marketplace will always out. And in some cases, it might not be good. St. Louis Rams, good example. Bad for the sport. But in your case, absolutely. Now, two things there. One is that, do you imagine Oakland when it doesn't have a team you think the fans are going to be pissed off if 5 years from now the city starts courting the Jacksonville Jaguars? I don't think they're going to care, to tell you the truth.
No.
You know.
And I think
to just briefly for my stupid knee-jerk take on, not that's going on, in the Vice story a few years ago, having spent a lot of time in Oakland writing that book, I grew so fond of the city and its people that when I wrote the Vice piece, if I can remember, I probably can't, it was a couple years ago, I was thinking of all the cities in damned America that need things to happen. You're taking the football team away from the Oakland Raiders, and that was my thinking. Now, My wife told me the other day about Oakland. Oh, by the way, you know what the next city is that people can't afford to live in? No. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was thinking much more in the romantic thing of, come on, Oakland. We're not talking about San Diego, which you and I both know is not down and out. But not that Oakland was. But you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Oakland was a true American working class city, and these things, these teams are public trusts, except they aren't, and they are simply a corporation, and these are franchises. And so, yes, in this case, I don't think anybody except for the hardcore would argue that this was best for Vegas. Didn't wrong anybody. If it wasn't Vegas, it was going to be somewhere else. And these days I'm thinking, I'm kind of glad it's Vegas.
There we go.
Well, I think Peter, just to sum it up, and we certainly appreciate all the time you've given us today. To sum it up, I think that in many ways, the spirit of Al Davis was kind of hovering over the move to Las Vegas because. Now, gaming was legalized, sports gaming, obviously, by the Supreme Court here just a while ago. But to me, it was another rebellious move. It's like, we're going to go to Vegas. We're going to go where the NFL and all these teams were like, oh, how could you go to Vegas where it's all hookers and gambling and all this? And at least that's the perspective, right? So to me,
if anybody had grown up, if anybody had grown up as I did with Davis, the rebel, Davis, the football mind. And Davis, the chip on his shoulder, healthy chip on his shoulder, I'm going to show you. If they went up with that Al Davis, they would be giving a standing ovation to going to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. This is Al Davis to the core. Now, the NFL, it'll be interesting to see, is it a fit for the state-old NFL corporation and Roger Goodell, whatever he does? Does he do the commission? Right? So, and I think I'm excited. Now I'm excited. Partly because of Golden Knights, partly because my brother and I just decided last night that he lives in New York City, I live north of New York City, but we're already going to fly out for games just because we grew up for the AFL. I was wondering this: have they come up with ideas for getting the best entertainer in town that week to do the halftime performance?
Well, so I'll tell you one thing that Matt and I, because we talk to people all over the country, obviously, about the Raiders coming here, and that is they are really behind the scenes, as the folks inside the organization that we talk to have told us, they are really planning to make the Raiders' presence here at the stadium, at their practice facility and headquarters, which they're building just outside Las Vegas. They want to make it the top experience, entertainment experience, back to what you said, in all of professional sports. So I think you're going to see things that are going to knock people's socks off, whether it's halftime show, whether it's pregame, whether it's outside before, whether it's during the summer you come to visit and you want to go visit a Hall of Fame at their headquarters. I think it's going to be something unlike anything else you're going to see, and that's where I think minds will change.
If you're Green Day and you're in town for 2 weeks, and the Raiders say, "Hey, listen, do you want to do an outdoor concert at the Vegas, at the game this Sunday?" Heck, yes.
Yeah, they'll do it.
And then the other end of the spectrum, maybe Tony Bennett if he's still alive.
Well,
you know what I mean? How cool
absolutely.
Would it be for some performers? And how cool would it be for some performers to say, "Oh, and I'm also not only doing those 2 weeks at the hotel, I'm going to be doing the Raider Charger game." No, not Chargers. Let's do Raiders 49.
49. There you go. Well, Peter, listen, it was absolutely pleasure to talk to you, and we're going to
thanks for thinking thinking of me.
Yeah, we're going to put a link up to your book, and we hope to talk to you again. And next time you're in town, please let us know, and we'll get together again.
Oh, you will. No, I'm a railroad freak, and the idea, and then Cuba. The whole thing. This is fascinating. All right. If you need help on the autobiography, ask Frank Gifford. I killed him.
Right. All right. That was Peter Richmond, author of Badasses, A Legend of Snake, Food, Dr. Death, and John Madden's Oakland Raiders. We're going to step aside here for another break, and when we come back, we'll continue the discussion here on Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
The final of the 3-game series between the Dodgers and the Angels is this afternoon at 4 on CBS Sports Radio, 1140.
Hi, this is Steve Wisniewski, and you're listening to the Silver and Black today.
Hi. All right, Stevie, bringing us back in. There's so many Raiders that come through Vegas, like getting those little rejoins and sound bites coming back in is getting a lot easier, Matt. And so I love that those guys are already coming here. And it was really cool to hear Peter at the end there, right? Because when we were preparing for that interview, folks, we were, Matt, again, he talks about his Vegas pride. We all have it here, but again, third generation, it riled you up. It riled me up a little bit because Peter, he's an Ivy League guy. He's a Raider fan, through and through. East Coast guy. The misconceptions about Las Vegas.
East Coasters.
Well, and even I was ready for it because even he used per capita income as proof that Las Vegas wasn't going to be able to support the city when per capita income is really a bad statistic to use. You need to use median income because it's more real,
right?
Because it includes the wide ranges of income. But it was great to see him come around and actually go further to say, and I know some of the people in Oakland aren't going to like this, but that this is exactly what Al Davis would have done.
Yeah, he was a maverick. He was the ultimate maverick. And it's funny because UNLV, they're the rebels, and that's kind of how Davis and, again, going back to those 70s teams were always considered rebels, right? And Davis loved Vegas. He loved Vegas. And given the opportunity, Al Davis would have brought the Raiders to Las Vegas. I don't think there's any doubt about that, especially when you look at what the city's done for the Raiders already in building the stadium. But it's so narrow-minded to attack Vegas without really knowing anything about the city. And like I said to him in the interview, that's why the Golden Knights and what they did was so great in opening up the eyes of everybody in the country that has never been to Vegas or has only been to Vegas on the Strip and has never seen anything outside of the glitz and glamour of the casinos. It really opened everybody up to the amazing community that we do have out here.
That's right. And we are coming up. Today is the 8th, correct? So that's 18 days until training camp, right?
Finally.
So it's right around the corner, and the Raiders kind of made their training camp schedule public along with media availability, which for most of you doesn't matter other than the fact that we can actually bring you some sound, and we'll be on top of this covering both camp and what the folks have to say on,
Colin's trying to get us out of here early, I think.
Colin's like, man, I got a place to be. Colin Pulicella, our engineer there. Anyway, but starts on July 26th, the players report. They just report that day. Rookies have to be in the 23rd. The first practice is Friday, July 27th from 9 a.m. approximately till noon. We'll hear from Jon Gruden. First day, of course, is always a little bit of, hey, we're back. And then you start to get things through. And from that first practice, Matt, exactly 2 weeks later, they will play the Detroit Lions, or the Detroit Lions, depending how you want to say it, in the first preseason game on August 10th. So, man, this is going to start rolling, and it goes to show you, we talked earlier about Las Vegas getting prepared for the Raiders coming, and that's what exactly the folks here at CBS Sports Radio 1140 did, is putting us on the air because they know the excitement's going to build, and it all starts with camp.
Yeah, and looking at preseason or looking at camp, and then I want to get into preseason a little bit too, because camp, it's really the first we get to see of what these guys got. And I wanted to talk about Gary and Conley specifically because I'm excited to see because I feel like he's such a talented guy and he has so much upside to him, but we haven't seen a lot of him in general in his career.
No,
and
he's like a rookie again.
Yeah,
and that's the big mystery behind him. Is he going to stay healthy? Is he going to be on the field?
Well, speaking of this, David, too, over on silverandblacktoday.com, if you haven't visited our website, go do it. We have great content all the time. Chris Reed, our senior NFL analyst, kind of polled all of us on who we thought would or who we're watching in camp, and Chris said Martavis Bryant and Reggie Nelson on the defense. Now, if we get into the guys here in the room, my pick was Doug Martin. I know I'm riding that horse until it's gone.
Yeah, you are.
I just think that he's got something to prove there. And Nicholas Morrow, another name that might not be top of everyone's list, but is he going to, with the help of a Derek Johnson, Tahir Whitehead, is he going to do that? Now, Matt, you had anyone at right tackle. You're interested to see what happens.
The position is what I want to watch because
Correct.
is it going to be a vet that steps up? Is it going to be one of these two rookies? Are they going to slide Miller over? I mean, that's the revolving door position on this offensive line and has been for a while, so I want to see somebody take control of that spot.
Well, and both of you and David both picked Garyon Conley to watch in camp, and there was some news. Garyon Conley sued the woman who erroneously accused him of rape. So interesting thing, and it's for like $58,000, something really small, but I think a hey, you shouldn't have done this, and that's right. Good. I mean, he was cleared of any wrongdoing there. So we'll see what happens. Well, guys, we're coming to the end of the show. David, thanks for joining us, man, and I know we'll have you out there doing some cool reporting pretty soon.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it as always.
All right, and Matt. Enjoy the movie today?
Scott, sorry.
I
don't know why I said Matt.
They both end in double T. Matt, you're going to see Ant-Man today with the family?
Man, let's go.
Enjoy.
I'm running out of here in about 2 minutes.
All right. We want to thank you guys. We want to thank Peter Richmond and Vinny Bonsignore for being our guests, and all of you for being the most important guests of all, for listening to the Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Visit us, silverandblacktoday.com, on Twitter, silverblack, the number 2 day. Thank you to all of us, our engineer Colin Pulicella, executive producer Tony Cardasco, and we sign off, I should say, but we never say goodbye, Raider Nation. Thanks for listening, and may the autumn wind always be at your back. We'll check you next time. Bye-bye.